Thank you so much, and good morning, everyone. Let's try that again. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Perfect. All right, so what we're here to talk about is DevOps. We're going to be talking about it all day long. One of the things that I think is important about DevOps is how it can transform the way that you do business and the way that you compete with your competition. I recently found a video that I like to share at the beginning of my talks that I believe highlights what your company can look like before and after you implement DevOps. What we're going to do is we're going to watch the video now, and then we'll talk about the video after.
But Holland comes in for a pit stop. Time to refuel and change tires. Lou Moore himself changes the tires. Only 4 crew members, including the driver, are allowed to work on the car. It's a tense time. Holland stays in his seat, anxious to get away. Let's watch. Tires are changed at last. A crewman polishes the windshield as Holland moves away just 67 seconds after he stopped.
They should be trying to go from swinging a hammer to being able to move a car in less than 3 seconds. Now, I'm extremely active on Twitter. It is the #1 way to get a hold of me. I actually spoke at a conference yesterday, and the way that they got a hold of me was they tweeted at me, and I flew all the way to England to come hang out with them. So if you want to get a hold of me, this is the best way. And I tweeted this video not too long ago, and I said DevOps before and after. Generally, people got what I was talking about. But obviously a couple people didn't here. I blurred their faces to make sure that I don't embarrass them. But I did not delete the tweet. So if you really are curious of who these 2 knuckleheads are, you can actually go find them, right? One of them said there's no value because there were so many more people in the second video. The other person said they didn't even refuel the car. There's clearly less value in the second pit stop from the first pit stop. So what I want to do is I want to address these 2 people, because I remember when I read these, I was sitting in my office reading these comments. And clearly I'm having like a physical reaction to this because my wife walks in and says, "What's wrong with you?" I'm like mumbling under my breath. I don't understand. How do they not get this? This is an amazing analogy for this. So what I did is I wrote this amazing blog post that explains why this is a great analogy. But what we're going to do is we're going to address these first 2 people. The increase in the number of people. I remember I started writing software at a little computer company called Compaq Computers. Does anyone remember Compaq Computers? All the old fogies remember Compaq Computers. I'm old too. I started writing software there in the mid-90s. And I remember when I was done, Donovan Brown, writing software, I would walk into a server room. And in that server room would be ProLiant servers connected to the internet, production boxes. I could pull out a tray, type in my username and password, and it would log me in. And I could then do whatever I needed to that machine. I had admin privileges, changing registry settings, deleting files, copying files, whatever I needed to. Literally, I was swinging a hammer at a ProLiant server till it did what I told it to do. And then I ran out of the room as fast as I could, because if I got out of there before the IT pro caught me, it was their problem. I had to put the software on. They had to keep the lights on. It was a beautiful job for me. Beautiful. Right? No consequences, no matter how bad the code was. It was not my fault anymore. It was their fault. It was just me and a computer. Very few people. Try that today. Impossible. First of all, you probably don't even know where the servers are. You definitely do not have admin permissions on those servers. Dev is involved, ops is involved, auditing is involved, security is involved, quality, program managers, the list goes on and on and on. Everybody wants to say they were involved in shipping the latest version of that piece of software, even if they weren't. There are simply more people involved in deploying software today than at any point in our history before. So on that level alone, this analogy works. There are more people involved today, which means I was right. This is a beautiful analogy for DevOps. But I didn't even see these as people. I saw them as automation, continuous integration, continuous delivery, infrastructure as code, security, rollbacks. That's what I saw here. Specialized services. You know what's important about DevOps is delivering value. The only way that you can know if you delivered value is to measure and monitor what you do in production. Check it out. If you watch this again, these two people here, they never move. These are two gentlemen monitoring a 3-second pit stop to see how it can be a 2.5-second pit stop next time. You should be doing the exact same thing in your organizations. Why make a change if you don't know if it improved anything? You have to measure before, run an experiment, and measure again after. That's exactly what they're doing right here. They're measuring everything that they do. You know, another thing that's really hot today in DevOps is security. Everyone wants DevSecOps now. These two gentlemen in the middle are literally just securing the car on the jack so that it does not fall off. This is security in action. That's their whole job. That's what I'd want to do, by the way, if I was on a pit crew. Just hold the car and then act like I did something major when I left off. It'd be awesome, right? How many of you are on your DevOps transformations right now? Anyone ever built a pipeline? Do you remember the first pipeline you built? It didn't work, right? And what was the first knee-jerk reaction you had? Man, how do we do a rollback? Because if this happens again, I need to be able to roll back really, really quickly. In my mind, this must have happened on this pit crew. You know why? Because this person here has a jack, and it jacks up the rear of the car. At some point, that jack must have failed. You know why? Because that guy has a jack too. Right? Sitting there waiting for that first jack to fail. Just like you have that rollback mechanism just in case your pipeline actually fails. It's the exact same thing. You know what else you should do in your DevOps pipeline? Is reevaluate your tools. Make sure that you're using the best tools for the job. In the past, they were using a hammer. In this video, they're using an impact wrench, a specialized tool designed to do one thing and one thing only. Take the tires off and then put the lug nuts back on to put the tire back on. The more I look at this video, the more I see other analogies and ways that this is a perfect analogy for what you should be doing inside your DevOps pipeline. Security is in here, rollback is in here, monitoring is in here, improving your tools. It's all in this picture here, right? So let's talk about the next person. Donovan, they didn't refuel the car. If you agree with that statement, you're as clueless as the person who said that. It's not that they did not refuel the car. It's that they did not have to refuel the car. That one word changes this drastically. I've always been taught that you are supposed to fix what hurts most first. Is refilling the car even the thing that hurts the most in this picture? They were done 30 seconds in filling the car. The other 37 seconds is spent changing the other tire. What they should be focused on is fixing the tire problem first. And let's imagine that they do. They realize that they can change tires now in 10 seconds instead of 67 seconds. Now they look at this picture, and for the next 20 seconds is the poor guy trying to put the fuel into the car. Because even if we filled it at the same pace in this video, in the second video, we would have been done in half the time. So let's say they got it down to 10 seconds. They realize that this poor person is still putting in gas. Now they have to fix that bottleneck. And instead of figuring out how to trick physics and use vacuums to get the gas into the car faster, they just shifted left technology and innovation, aerodynamics, made the engine more efficient, made the car more efficient, to where they eliminated the bottleneck altogether so that they don't even have to fuel the car. And you go from the first video to this video, where they not only changed the front 2 tires, but also the rear 2 tires in less time than the entire pit stop before. This is what your company should be trying to do every single time you think about DevOps. Monitor what you're doing and make sure that you're doing it faster and faster and faster. Like I said, the more I watch this video, the more I see it being a perfect analogy for what your company can look like before and after DevOps, okay? At Microsoft, this is the definition for DevOps that we use. You're going to see me use it. You're probably going to see Martin use it. It's just our North Star. It's all about delivering value. You notice that this does not have software in the definition at all. The reason that I avoided the word software is because I believe that if I said the word software, I'd only be talking to half the room, the dev side of the room. But this is called DevOps. And another reason I wanted to focus on value and not software is because I meet a lot of organizations, and the first question they say to me is, Donovan, why do our dev and our ops teams work against each other? I say, well, how are they incentivized? Like, well, we incentivize the ops teams by keeping the lights on the servers on. Like, okay, how do you incentivize the dev teams? By changing the servers as much as they can, by adding features. Like, guess what? The easiest way to keep a server's lights on is not to change it. So if you're going to reward me for keeping the lights on that server, I'm going to do whatever I have to stop people from changing that server. And if I'm a developer who gets rewarded for adding features, I'm going to do whatever I can to change that server. So we are literally taught to fight against each other, because to get the big bonus, we have to do the thing that gets you the smallest bonus. Now, what if instead we changed the conversation and said, hey, ops and dev, you both only get the big bonus if we deliver value to our end users. They're naturally going to work together, because that's the only way that they get the big bonus. Because to deliver value takes dev and ops, great infrastructure and great software, not one or the other, but both. So focusing on value aligns your team on a common goal, and it naturally makes them work together. The hardest part of this sentence is people. It should be red and underlined and flashing, because you're here, but we invited a lot more people than that are sitting in this room right now. And some of them might have been your peers. So when you leave here, I hope you're excited and pumped up about DevOps and you know what it can do for your company, but you're going to be met by resistance by everyone who is not sitting in here. They're going to keep doing it the exact same way they've always been doing it. And what's really funny is success is the biggest deterrent to implementing DevOps. What I mean by that is if I've gotten successful doing it this old way, I'm the biggest in my industry doing it the old way. If it's not broken, why would I fix it? The reason why is because remember when that first car was getting its tires changed? You heard all those other cars still driving around on the track, just lapping you? That's your competition who's realized that there's a better way of doing this than the way that you're currently doing it right now. So your people have to get on board. Your people have to understand that this is not optional. This is not a nice to have. This is fundamental and required for you to succeed as a company. And when you do, the process and the products, that's the easy part. We already understand Agile and Kanban and Scrum, and we understand that stuff. And products, not only do we have products, but our competitors have products, and most of us are giving it away for free. The process and the products are the easy part. But you got to get your people to understand that delivering value is the goal. And we're going to talk about that today. So, what technologies do you do? This is not an inclusive list. These are just some of the fundamental things. I believe that continuous integration is like that first domino that starts this chain reaction of this greatness that takes that code and puts it out into production. Because the first thing you got to do is build it, and then package it and test it such as you can then push it out into production. Once you have continuous integration firing on all cylinders, it's time to take that increment of shippable software and actually ship the software. A lot of people feel like they've got taken advantage of because they went off and they started implementing Scrum and Agile. And like all we have now are these piles of increments of shippable software, but Scrum and Agile didn't tell us how to ship any of it. They just say produce it. And we did, and now it still takes months or years to get that code actually into production. And that's where CD is going to come in and say, nope, we're going to take that increment of shippable software, and we're actually going to help you ship it to the environments that you need to. And as I said before, and as the two gentlemen explained or showed us there, you got to monitor and learn what you're doing. If you're an Agile or a Scrum shop, you should be having something called a product backlog. It is a laundry list of any and everything that you want your software to do. The key about that is the most important thing should be at the top. How do you know it's the most important thing? Because your product owner said so. And how do you know that they're right? Because they're all knowing, right? That's what a product owner is. They know everything. They know why that thing is most important. And you just take their word for it. So what do? You move heaven and earth, and you turn that idea into a working piece of software, and you ship it. You go have pizza, you go celebrate a milestone, but did you deliver value? If you're not monitoring, if you don't have telemetry, you actually have no idea. You cannot quantify that and prove that you actually deliver value. Your priorities could completely be out of whack, and you're actually delivering the wrong thing. If you put telemetry in there, even if you didn't deliver value, it's better to know that that's not valuable and that we need to go try something else than to just randomly keep putting features out to your customers that are not delivering value. You have to monitor what you're doing and learn from that monitoring, and that telemetry is extremely important. I think we collect on the order of 7 terabytes of telemetry every single day on Azure DevOps to make sure that we're delivering value and not just delivering features to our customers. Now, you're also going to need a platform that's very flexible, powerful, and open. And Azure checks all these boxes. When it comes to flexible, we can give you IaaS, we can give you PaaS, we can give you SaaS, we can give you hybrid. Right? Anywhere that you want to run your code, we're going to help you run it there. Any services that you need, we're going to stop having you have to reinvent the wheel and just use the services right out of the box. When it comes to powerful, we have cores and data centers popping up all over the world. It's unbelievable. Every time Scott Guthrie does a keynote, he says how many data centers we have, and it's a huge jump from the last time he got on stage, which might have only been like a week ago, right? And it's just stamping them out like crazy. It's unbelievable. And when it comes to open, 50% of the cores that we run are Linux cores. People think that Azure is just for Windows. They're thinking wrong. right? We run more Linux than we do Windows in our own cloud because we're completely open. I love to say any language, any platform, and we try to prove it every single day. I can't remember the last time I did a .NET demo, not because I don't love .NET, I do, but I have to prove to people that it works for Java and Node.js and Python and all the other languages. I've been deploying to AWS and GCP and Azure and mobile devices because I have to prove that it's any language and any platform. So do not believe this is the old TFS 2005 that only worked for .NET on Windows. Those days are long gone and long behind us. The way that we provide all this valuable stuff to you is through Azure DevOps. The name sucks, okay? So don't worry about it. I'm there with you. It's a horrible, horrible name. But please do not let the name detract from how powerful these features are. They are incredible. Azure Boards is basically your Jira compete. So if you're using Jira today, that is the direct competitor for Jira. It's where you're going to do all your planning, your project management, your Kanban boards, your task boards, capacity planning, release management. It's unbelievable. Release planning, excuse me. It's all in Azure Boards. And it links up really well with everything else on this page, including things like GitHub, that isn't on this page. Azure Pipelines, hands down my favorite feature of the entire suite. It is our CI/CD platform. It gives you access to Mac, Windows, and Linux, which no one else on the planet does. I was so sad when you guys said you weren't doing mobile development because you just don't understand how cool it is to have a Mac sitting in the cloud ready to do your builds for you. It's amazing because I have a Mac and I've had to configure it several times to do iOS builds, and it's a nightmare. But now all I have to do is say, hey, there's a Mac up there, here's my code, go build it, and this beautiful IPA comes back down to me from the cloud. It's like magic, right? And we have that for you, and no one else has that. We have Azure Repos. Think of GitHub, but private. That's the best way of describing it. Yes, you can have public ones here, but that's really not its forte. If you want to do public open source development, GitHub is the answer. But if you want to have your entry-level, I wouldn't even say entry-level Git. If you want to have your private Git that you don't want anyone else to see, Repos is fantastic. And the reason I like Repos so much is that it naturally talks to everything else on this board. You get unparalleled traceability with no effort whatsoever. It just wants to talk to everything else on this board. You have manual testing teams, as a lot of companies should. You can use our Azure Test Plans, which ties into our boards really well. Just imagine that you're grooming your product backlog. You're looking at a product backlog item, and when you double-click on it, you can actually see the manual test cases that your testing team is going to run against that to verify that you're done. How cool would that be? Because now you can actually read the test cases, understand how they're going to use it, and have it guide your UI, have it guide your design and your patterns. You can do that now because these two things are not separate. They're actually integrated together. And then finally, artifacts. Think of Artifactory. This is where you're going to be able to store your NuGet packages, your NPM packages, Maven packages. We're adding more and more technologies to it all the time. And now you can have a curated list of where you want your engineers to go and get their packages without going to the wild and potentially having vulnerabilities or issues in those particular packages. And all this stuff comes together inside of Azure DevOps. What's really cool about it is that you don't have to use all of it. You can use as much or as little as you want. We understand that we live in a world where people have already made an investment in Jenkins, and they're not going to abandon that investment, nor do we want you to. But you have a problem when it comes to releasing. So all you have to do is use the release management portion of pipelines, taking the output from your Jenkins build, and actually being able to deploy it out into the environment that you want. You now get to take it on piece by piece. And what I would encourage you to do is fix what hurts most first, just like I talked about in the analogy. Pick the one of the 5 services that you need that fixes what hurts the most for you. And then what you're going to notice is that, man, that was really easy. What would happen if I used something else? And then what you're going to do is realize that once you solve the first problem, something else becomes the pain point. And that's what you want to go fix next. And hopefully it's going to be another service inside of Azure DevOps that's going to be able to fix that for you as well. But you do not have to rip and replace everything that you have. You can actually start small, take one problem at a time, and just keep solving them with the services that we provide. And this, again, any language, any platform, AWS actually has an extension in our marketplace that you can actually use to deploy to everything inside of AWS. GCP has a command line that you can use, and because our tool sets are so flexible, if you can do it from the command line, or you can do it from a REST API, you can do it from our build and our release system. So since GCP has a CLI, we can use that CLI as part of our build and deploy to GCP just as easily as Azure or AWS. Right? So it's a brilliant system. Like I told you a story earlier before we got started about updating a GoDaddy DNS record with the IP that I just got from a newly provisioned AKS cluster. That's because I can run whatever I want from a command line. I wrote a PowerShell script that actually updates GoDaddy using a REST API, and now it's a permanent part of my pipeline, and I never see the GoDaddy API ever again. right? I just run a build, and all my IP addresses are fixed, right? That's the kind of power that you have available to you. Putting all this together with Azure in the center is just an amazing ecosystem of power. And you can still use, like I said, Terraform, Puppet, Chef, Ansible, whatever tools are already in your quiver, whatever expertise if you've already built up, whatever investments you've already made, you do not have to abandon any of those. You can actually leverage those and just tack on what we do here at Microsoft. So let's talk about how do you get started doing this stuff. The easiest way to get started is to simply go to our site, dev.azure.com. And from there, you can actually just get started for free. For example, these 3 gentlemen here in the row behind them, these 5 people here could go create an account and get started for absolutely $0 and 0 cents. You're now a startup. We're going to give you everything that I just talked about for free. It costs you absolutely nothing. When you add the 6th person, that's when we make all of our money back, right? We charge you, what is it, like $6 now? It's $6 a person, so it's insignificantly cheap for you to be able to use all this power for your people. Now, what's really cool is that if any of the 5 people in that front row already had an MSDN subscription, you don't even count against the 5 that you get for free, right? You just keep adding people until you have 5 that don't have an MSDN, and then the 6th person will charge you $6, and you get everything that I just mentioned for free. If you already have some code off in GitHub, you can actually get started from GitHub as well. Inside of the GitHub Marketplace, you're going to see that there's actually underneath continuous integration and continuous delivery, you'll find Azure pipelines. And you can actually add Azure pipelines to your GitHub repositories if they're public, again, for free. You get 10 concurrent pipelines, unlimited build minutes, access to Mac, Windows, and Linux, and a single YAML file to rule them all. How many of you develop on GitHub? Anyone peruse GitHub? So if you've ever gone in GitHub, almost every repo you've gone into has more than 1 YAML files. They have a YAML file for AppVeyor and another YAML file for Travis, or they have one for Circle and one for Jenkins. The reason why is because they can't get to Mac, Windows, and Linux from anywhere else. They have to use 2 and 3 YAML files to reach all the platforms. Those days are gone. If you use Azure Pipelines, you write 1 YAML file that rules them all. I only maintain 1 file, but I have access to Mac, Windows, and Linux with a single YAML file, which is awesome. So if you want to start using our stuff, either go to dev.azure.com or come directly here to GitHub and go ahead and connect it to your pipeline and start building in the cloud for free. The Macs, the Windows, and the Linux machines are actually in the cloud just waiting for you, right? There's nothing for you to install. There's nothing for you to configure. You just do a git push, sit back and relax, and let us go build your code for you, okay? So again, pipelines is my favorite feature. It's really, really easy to get started with. So that's all I wanted to talk about on getting started. Let's talk about some of the other features. Azure Boards. This is Kanban boards, task boards, capacity planning tools. This is where you do all your agile planning. It comes out of the box with 3 different templates. We have an agile template for those who want to use the words like user story and issue. We have a Scrum template for those who want to say product backlog items and impediments. And then if you're low-key waterfall, we call it CMMI because we don't want to embarrass people and call them waterfall in public. So we call it CMMI, but it's waterfall. Change requests, requirements, the whole freaking 9 yards. So if you're that, we actually have templates. And why do we have so many templates? Because the tool changes its vocabulary to match the words that you use in your meetings. If you're going to say user stories in your stand-ups, why would you want to say product backlog items in your tools? We want the tools to match the way that you work, and that's why we actually have different templates, and some of the rules and the guidance that the templates give you is slightly different. The Kanban boards are completely customizable. Almost all of it's customizable now. If you come from the TFS world, you remember we used to say don't customize it unless you absolutely had to customize it. And people would customize it anyway and get themselves in a lot of trouble. So what we've done is we still allow you to customize this one, but we put guardrails so that you don't get yourself into trouble. All the customizations that you make are going to be upgradable automatically, and you won't lose any of the features like you used to do back on-prem, which is really nice as well. So let's go ahead and look at boards. Now, this is a cool one because what I'm going to show you is actually how we use boards. So what Martin's going to show you later is how we actually do DevOps inside of Microsoft. And the way that we do DevOps inside of Microsoft is we use Azure DevOps inside of Microsoft, which is really, really powerful. So what I'm going to show you here is an actual dashboard from one of the actual teams that builds Azure DevOps. I'm not going to go into the details here because I'm going to leave that for Martin to cover for you, but I wanted to show you that you have this really cool configurable dashboard. Some of this data is coming from Azure DevOps. Some of this data can come from Azure. For example, if you have application insights configured into your application for telemetry, that telemetry can actually be surfaced here on your dashboard inside of Azure DevOps. So you can say, hey, how's our last release doing? Is it healthy? Is it performing well? Are we having a lot of server errors? And if so, then we can start logging bugs, and those bugs would actually show up here on this dashboard. Another thing that you can do here is actually go over here to our Kanban board. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you an actual Kanban board. Don't take a picture of this because we're about to have a build conference, and some of this stuff is about to be delivered at build, and I don't want to spoil it for them. However, I'm not going to build, so part of me wants to leak all this stuff too, right? So I wasn't going this year, so I'm not happy about it. But nevertheless, these are actual real boards. This is like a real active board, and as you can tell, later yesterday, there was one of them that had a different color on it, but since this is real data, it's always moving. See if I can find it again. But oh, there it is. Sorry. So you can see some of these are different colors here because we have rules that we can actually say that if this is blocked, I want it to be red so that no one misses it. Or if it's a certain priority, I need it to be a certain color so that it grabs people's attention. Or if it's assigned to Donovan, everyone swarm on it because he's not going to get it done, that kind of stuff, right? So you can do whatever you need to here. You can customize it. And they're really doing bad. This is called a WIP limit. Does everyone know what WIP stands for? Work in progress. And the top number is supposed to never be bigger than the bottom number, right? So we need to go have a conversation because that was 16 yesterday and it's 18 today. So people are just completely ignoring their WIP limits, which is bad. WIP is supposed to make sure you get stuff done. They're basically ignoring the WIP anyway. So we need to actually change this to where like literally if you try to drag it over there, it would just like bounce back out, right? And not let them drop it over there versus just telling them that they're over their WIP limit. You can also look at this as a as a backlog as well. So this is just that laundry list that I was talking about earlier. I won't drag and drop any of this stuff because they get mad at me when I do that for a demo because I just changed the priorities of all this stuff just to show that I can, and that they don't laugh anymore. So we won't make that joke anymore, but I could actually change all this stuff. And you see these will have an arrow on them. They can actually break these down so I can show you the hierarchy here. And if you see the hierarchy, you can get an idea of exactly how much work it's going to take to finish that one. That one's not very bad. But if you scroll down, you'll see some of these are going to have several child nodes underneath them as well. And this is just giving me a better idea of to get this particular item done, it's going to take these particular tasks, and we can see if they're proposed or done. And if I want to put these into a particular sprint, I simply drag and drop this over to this sprint here. And as you can see, we're currently in sprint 148. And then we can go ahead and decide how we want to do our sprint planning going forward. There's also capacity planning in this tool as well. So again, if you're thinking about Jira, this is the exact compete for Jira. And what's really nice about this is that you can actually create branches from here if you want to start doing your work. You can associate all of these work items to different test cases or to your commits, your builds, and your releases that you do inside of your product. So that when your release is done, you can click on it and say, hey, why did we release this? What features were in here? What lines of code were changed? All this stuff just ties together. So again, just think about work item tracking. And this is what we have here in our boards product. My little clicker here again. Now we're going to talk about repos. Our repos system is an extremely amazing product. The reason I say that is because it hosts one of the largest known Git repositories in the world, which is Windows. Windows Git repository was about 350 gigabytes, I think it was, when we first put it in there. And Git itself, the technology, was simply not capable of handling a 350 gigabyte repository. If you're familiar with Git, you probably do a Git status 5 times, 6 times a day. And that should take a couple milliseconds to tell you that, hey, you've changed these files or you didn't change any files. To do it on Windows, when it was originally put in there, I think it was 5 minutes or something like that to do a Git status to find out that you didn't change anything. I just waited 5 minutes to find out that nothing on my hard drive had changed. It was unusably slow. I forget to clone the repo was like hours to clone the repo. It was ridiculous, right? So what did we do at Microsoft? We had to go to Git for Windows. We invented the Git virtual file system. Actually invented a file system that allows Git to scale when it's 350 gigabytes or bigger, and we gave it back to the open source, right? So our competitors can go off and implement this exact same technology so that you can do big stuff. And it's only the biggest now because inside of Microsoft, we have this mandate that we're going to use one engineering system. And we're all at different cadences on moving to that one engineering system, which is Azure DevOps. When Office gets here, the rumors have it that Office is going to be 450 gigabyte Git repository, right? Isn't it weird that Office is 100 gigabytes bigger than the operating system upon which it runs? For some reason, my brain never wraps its head around how you can be bigger than what you run on, but Office is much bigger than Windows. And it's a fantastic repository. It has a great pull request, which Martin's going to show you later on, an actual pull request from our team. Do not miss that. It's always fun to see our pull request process. But I won't show you that, but I will show you one of our repositories here. So this is just a quick snapshot of one of our repositories. We do trunk-based development. Are you going to go into trunk-based development? Right. So all you're seeing here are these little feature branches all merging back into master. But again, when it comes to scaling, we can obviously scale to Windows. And Windows is our largest customer, about 20,000 active engineers, millions and millions of work items. I forget how many builds and check-ins they do every day. It's unbelievable. I do a show called Azure DevOps Interviews, which I will give you a link to at the end of this presentation, where I've sat down with the guy who was responsible for moving that Git repository into Azure DevOps, and the woman who was brave enough to do all the work item tracking. Windows is such a big organization that some of the teams are waterfall, some of the teams are agile, yet they all have to work together, and she's figured out how to do it, right? So I have no idea how Jill does that. It's an amazing story, but you can see all that stuff later on. But they also use this product. It's funny, using our own product has made it really, really good, right? Because if you use 2005, we weren't using 2005. We were selling it to you, but we weren't using it internally. It was our dirty little secret. And I think it was Tech Ready 19. We have an internal conference at Microsoft called Tech Ready. And I remember back then I was a seller. I used to sell this product instead of just evangelize for the product. And Satya Nadella was in the keynote, and I remember him saying, we have to stop living this fake life where we would write software for others that we would not use ourselves. He was talking specifically about this product. And that's when he made the mandate of the one engineering system. Office is coming, Windows is coming, Xbox, Bing. If you write software at Microsoft, you will be using Azure DevOps. At that time, it was called Visual Studio Online, I believe it was way back then, or VSTS, or one of the other names. But the thing was that the product instantly started getting better, like exponentially better, right? Because like, you got to use the stuff that you're working in, and Windows has to use it. Like our crown jewels now have to use this product. It better get good. And if you'll notice, 2013 was a really cool release. 2015 even better. 17 it just kept getting better and better and better. So dogfooding is a fantastic way to put quality in your product. And that's the same way that we know that our Git repository is really good, is because some of our biggest customers are actually ourselves. So I'm not going to beat that one up because I don't want to steal the thunder from what Martin's going to show you in the pull request. But the pull request ties into this, and you're going to see a lot of cool stuff with our repositories there. Now my favorite feature. This is Azure Pipelines. Any language, any platform. And it's highly extensible. And I'm going to show you this in the second section. So after lunch, I'm going to come back and do another demo. And that's when I'm going to be talking about the extensibility of this a lot, right? And I'm actually going to show off some of it in the demo I'm going to do later on. If you're ready for containers, we're ready for containers too. And it's a fantastic way to build your open source products. We have the best open source offering on the planet when it comes to capabilities, capacity, minutes, and platforms that we offer you. And now that we own GitHub, it's just going to get better and better and better. After you start doing CI, it's time to start doing CD. This is where we're going to actually release it. And you can actually use ARM templates. You can use the CLI, Ansible, Chef, Terraform, things we haven't even thought of yet. Duffel's coming out there a lot. You can use blueprints, whatever you want to do. Again, anything you can do from the command line or the REST API, you can do from here. So even technologies that don't exist yet are going to be able to be worked with and used really well here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take you and show you some really cool pipelines that I've built, some of my own personal projects and some of the projects that others have been working on as well. This is one of my, like I said, this is one of my favorite features. So what we're going to be looking at now is one of my flagship demo applications. It's called People Tracker. And it basically just is a database that allows you to track people. And the reason I like this is because I changed the application and the database schema while the attendees are using the app, and nothing skips. Right? It's just a really fun demo. Now, this demo is made up of lots of different pieces. It has a mobile front end written in Xamarin, so it works on iOS and Android, requires a Mac. It has a Docker .NET Core application that runs inside of Kubernetes, that is the front end that you actually see, backed by a app service running a web service that is reading out of SQL Server Azure. And so they can imagine, like every part of Azure I could use, I tried to throw into one big demo. And now you can imagine, how many builds do you need to be able to build the Docker container and the mobile application and the database project and the apps and the web services? Just one. I only need one build, even though I need a Mac, a Windows, and a Linux machine to do all that. I don't need 4 and 5 different builds. This is a single build definition. And this build definition right here is building what I call a BER service, which won't make any sense to anyone who's not doing mobile, so I'm not going to go into what a BER service is, but it's just a web service, okay? And that web service is actually being built in .NET Core, so I can host it inside of containers or not, in containers if I want to. But I'm building this one on a Windows agent, as you can see here on Windows. If I scroll down, you'll notice that I'm actually building this Docker. This is a Docker image that I'm building here. So it's still .NET Core, but I'm building it and publishing it for Docker. Using the Azure CLI, I'm actually standing up an ACR, which is an Azure Container Registry, as part of my build to make sure that I have a place to park the image that I just built. What's also cool here is that I'm publishing my app, but ACR has a building mechanism inside of it. So you can upload your context folder to ACR and say, hey, build my image in yourself, and then tag it and leave it there when you're done. That way I don't need a machine that has Docker on it at all, right? Because this is just a normal .NET build and publish. I take it, I tell ACR, go grab it and build it on yourself, so I don't need a Docker configured machine at all. And then I basically copy some infrastructure as code files across, and I publish my artifact. That all happens on a Linux machine. Then I scroll down down a little bit further. I have a database project, Selenium test, and my .NET full framework web service being built on a Windows machine. And then you go even further down and you realize that there's a mobile application here being built on a Mac. This is a single build. I commit code, all these things start firing off. Because I have so many build agents, all 4 of these start to run at the exact same time. These do not happen sequentially, they happen in parallel. And then when they're done, all of the artifacts, the APK, the IPA file, the database projects, the zip files, all end up as one artifact that I can then tease apart inside of my release. So just imagine how much easier it is not having to create 4 and 5 different builds and then figure out how to coordinate them and then get all the outputs into the same place. I create a single build definition, and then I have all access to all the machines I want, and these different phases all run in parallel. It's freaking awesome. And then what's really nice about this is if I wanted this in YAML, I could get it in YAML as well. I actually prefer and like the UI. I understand why YAML is important. And if you really want the YAML badly, just click this button here, and we'll write the YAML for you, right? And then you just take the YAML, stick it in your repository, and you can do this exact same thing without looking at the UI. But I really like the UI. Another thing that we're going to talk about here is releasing. So all that stuff that I just talked about is being released. And what's funny is that all these first boxes, that's just the dev environment, right? Those are not individual environment. Those are just different stages of the deploying my dev environment. First, I have to go off and do the common infrastructure. So there's dev, QA, and prod, but there's common infrastructure that all those things rely upon. Right? Think about Key Vault or Burr servers and things like that, all are going to be deployed here. In parallel, am I not only deploying the common infrastructure, I'm also deploying the dev environment infrastructure that's required as well. Once both of these are done, I start deploying the applications inside the infrastructure that I just deployed. What's really fun about this demo when I do it is that my Azure subscription, when I start, is empty. There's not a single resource group. There's not a single resource in my application, my Azure subscription. But running this build and this release together, everything starts to get provisioned automatically. And once I know everything is good, I then come over here and I run my mobile and I send my mobile out to App Center. And then down here I have all of my testing that's going to happen. Selenium test and my test cloud test happen. And when all that's good, I rinse and repeat this again inside of QA and then finally again inside of production. So you can scale out and imagine how complicated your builds can get. You can actually deploy anything on any platform. This could be a Raspberry Pi. It could be a Commodore 64. And I'm dead serious about that. There's a blog post where a guy actually used Azure DevOps to deploy to a Commodore 64. When I say any language, any platform, we're not bluffing, right? We can actually do this stuff for anything. Another one of the cool ones is this one here. So you can obviously switch the theme of your Azure DevOps from light to dark. And I switched it for dark just to prove that you could do that. And this is probably hands down the most complicated deployment I've ever seen. I wrote an open source product called YoTeam. What YoTeam allows you to do is stand up pipelines like the one I just showed you by answering 5 questions. You type in YoTeam, you tell it the language you want to program in, the Azure subscription that you want, and you sit back and relax, and this entire pipeline just comes out the other end. Now, it supports Mac, Windows, and Linux. It supports 5 different targets inside of Azure, and it also supports Node.js, Java, .NET Core, and full .NET Framework. Oh yeah, and also PowerShell, which we just added. So what these are actually doing here, these are test environments. Because for me to be able to push a change, I have to first prove that it works in every one of the configurations I just mentioned. If you do the math, that's about 63 different environments across 3 different platforms, 4 different languages, and 5 different platforms inside of Azure. What's really cool about this is that this takes about 3 hours to get through. You know how many days it took me to do this before I have no idea because I'd always give up. So I have no idea how many days it would take to test all this stuff manually. But now a person gives me a pull request. 3 hours later, it either gets rejected or I get it to approve it, and it goes out into production. And when it goes out into production, I know that it is perfect because I've literally tested every possible combination on every possible platform before it goes out into production. This is the type of power that DevOps and this product itself can actually give you. knowing with 100% certainty that what you're about to ship to production is perfect, because we allow you to do testing, pen testing, security scans, whatever it is that you need inside of your actual pipeline. So I love showing this pipeline as well, because I remember I got challenged on Facebook once, or no, it was on Twitter. Yeah, Donovan, Azure DevOps looks good, but we have a tough environment. It has 21 environments in it. I'm like, 21? I just started giggling. I'm like, laugh out loud, 21. Here's 63, right? And I'm not even done building this thing yet, right? We can handle whatever you want to throw at us. So this is another reason I love pipelines, is because it's extremely, extremely flexible. So how am I doing on time here? I'm not doing too bad, actually. So Azure Pipelines is fantastic. It's highly extensible, too. You can write your own extensions for it. You can write your own tasks for it as well, which is something that I like to do in my spare time, is just add to it what it needs. All of our tasks that we've written for it, that you saw me actually talking about there, are written in the open by Microsoft. So there's a GitHub repository. You can go and type in Azure DevOps task, I believe it is, in GitHub, and you'll find the repository with all the tasks in it. Why am I telling you this? Because you can actually create a pull request and put your own task back in the box. 2 of my tasks have actually been put in the box, right, which is cool. When I worked for Jamie Cool, my Docker tasks were in the box, and there was another one that I wrote, I forget. Oh, the SSDT task. I wrote those because I wasn't willing to wait for the team, and next thing you know, the team's like, okay, we're going to take those over for you, and they've been in the box ever since, which is really, really cool. So you can do the same thing. You can actually add your own task, and we'll put them in the box, or you can see how rewritten our task and write your own and keep them to yourself, right? Because you don't have to publish them publicly. You can also publish them privately for your own organization if you want to give yourself some type of advantage. You can do that as well. So I already did that one. So let's talk about test plans. Test plans are for companies who have a normal QA team who has to go off and do manual testing and create test plans and test matrices and things like that. And the reason that I like this so much is that whenever I take over a team as a Scrum Master, the first thing I do is I go find my QA team and I invite them to the family. Because normally they're not part of the family. They're just this put upon resource that you throw black boxes of code over the wall to and expect them to count all the bugs for you. But what I do instead is I bring them into our planning meetings. I'm like, okay, this is the work item that we're looking at. These are the criteria. How are you going to test this particular work item? And I have them use our testing tools to link to that work item all the manual test cases that they're going to run and the steps that anyone can run to go verify that it does what it's supposed to do. Having that information ahead of time allows my developers to develop higher quality code. How many times have you developed code and the person logged a bug against it, not because it was broken, but because they didn't just agree with how the code actually worked? Oh, I thought the button was going to be over there, so I logged that as a bug. Well, who cares where the button is? Like, how does that make any difference? Or I thought it should be a drop down versus a checkbox, so I called that as a bug, even though it functions the same way. If you knew how they were going to test it ahead of time and that they expected to check a box, you could save yourself a lot of time because you wouldn't have put a drop down in there with yes, no in it. You would have put a checkbox because that was the test set it was supposed to be. And all of a sudden, you're saving yourself tons of time. So having this tool in the product and so tightly integrated with our work item tracking can actually speed your development because now you know how they're going to actually test the product before you start writing it. So let me show you how our test plans actually work. I'm actually a really big fan of this product. And this used to be a WPF application. Like, it used to be called Test Manager. So if you've ever used Test Manager, we've basically taken all that functionality and we moved it into the web browser. By doing that, you now have access to it on Mac, Windows, and Linux. Because it was a WPF application before. You had to be on a Windows machine to run Test Manager. But now that it's web-based, anyone can run it from anywhere, including your mobile device. And you'll notice here I have a couple of different test suites. The test suites come in several different flavors. You have a static test suite. That's basically a logical box where I just put in all the test cases that I want to run, and I can reorder them if I wanted to. The other one is the requirements-based test suite, which is the one that I hope everyone starts to use, because if you do what I just described a moment ago, where you actually have your QA team as part of your planning exercises, and you associate the test cases to the requirements, those requirements are actual test suites. They're a collection of test cases that I need to run to verify that something has actually happened. And you can pull those requirements right into your test plan, and they become the test suite themselves. And if you add or remove test cases, they automatically update here as well. And then there's the last one is what we call a query-based test suite. This is where you might want to say, man, we're under fire. We need to do some testing, but we don't need to do all of it. I need to do all my priority 1 test cases. So what you would do is you write a query that says, show me all my priority 1 test cases. And when a test case is either promoted to priority 1 or demoted out of priority 1, that test suite automatically adjusts itself to only show you the things that meet that criteria. So it's really nice and flexible. And what you do here is you basically have those test suites, and then you can see that I have one of them that's currently in progress, and I have some of them that are active that I haven't run yet. I can pass and fail those. And if you open these particular things up, you'll see all the different anatomy of a particular test. So I open one of them up, you'll see that it has a description and it has the steps that I'm going to take. For example, I'm going to open the mobile app, I'm going to select people from the menu, and then I would just continue to write down each individual step with the expected result for that particular step. A lot of people realize that testing is very similar. I do the same 5 things to start all my tests. I start a web browser, I navigate to the website, I put in my username, my password, and I click OK. That's 5 steps. What's really cool about our testing is you can actually take those 5 steps and create what we call a shared step. That way, if at some point it goes from 5 to 6 steps, you don't have to go and change hundreds of test cases. You go and change that one shared step to say now there's 6 steps instead of 5, and then all hundreds of your tests now have that reflect that new change. You understand what I'm saying? So you're modularizing your test development just like you would your code that you write as a developer. And we've given that power to all of our testers as well. The other thing that we allow you to do here, which is pretty cool, is actually set up your test configurations. So let me go ahead and expand my set here. And over here, you're going to see configurations. And this is where you're going to see things like, am I running on iOS, Android, Firefox, and Windows, what browsers, what operating systems. And what this is going to allow the tester to do is put out all the different configurations that they need, build what we call a test matrix, and then we're going to help them track across that test matrix what they have or have not actually tested. So they make sure they have high levels of code coverage as well. So I just wanted to take you a quick synopsis of what this is, and we have some videos on Channel 9 where they give you a little deeper dive on what our test plans do, but this helps round out the offering that we have from Azure DevOps. And then finally, we're going to talk about Azure Artifacts, and I can actually show you how I use Azure Artifacts as well. That VS team and the Yo team I mentioned earlier, Yo team is actually developed and pushed first to Artifacts before it's pushed to NPM. You might be like, well, why are you doing that? The reason is because I learned the very hard way that just because your NPM package works on Windows does not mean your NPM package works on Mac or Linux. Why would it not work on all of them? Because the casing of a word was different, right? That casing means absolutely nothing to Windows, and it works no matter how it's cased. But if you have a configuration that says the file is lowercase and you give it to Linux, and that file starts with an uppercase letter, Linux will not work. I learned that very, very painfully. So what I ended up doing is saying, hey, I need a temporary place for me to be able to publish my packages and install them on those different platforms before I push them to NPM or the PowerShell gallery, because I don't want people seeing that these are fake or alpha bits. I don't want them seeing them until I know that they're perfect. So what I'm able to do now is take Azure Artifacts as my dev environment. And what I do is I will package my package, and then I will upload it to Azure Artifacts. And as part of my release pipeline, I actually install it from Artifacts as I will from the PowerShell gallery or from NPM or from NuGet or whatever the case might be onto Mac, Windows, and Linux. I run all my unit and integration tests again, and I verify that it works on all those platforms before I then take those exact same 0s and 1s and publish them publicly to the actual stores that I want people or the package management I want people to get them from. So this has allowed me a great deal of flexibility and confidence in what I'm actually pushing into production. Another way that you can actually use Artifacts is that this could be a curated list of packages that have been approved by your organization for use in your own applications. Because what you don't want necessarily is someone going out into the public, pulling down a package that has vulnerabilities in it, hasn't been scanned or verified by your company, and then getting you in a lot of liability and a lot of risk. By using this instead, you've now said this is the only place you can download packages because these have all been vetted, blessed, and certified to be good for our use. And then this is where you actually do your package management instead. So it's a kind of like a boring little demo, but I'm going to show it to you anyway because there's really not much to see. It's a package store, right? So if I come over here, there's a package store. Okay, so that's a great demo of, it's nothing to show, right? It's like, there's packages in there. What's cool is that these are like my packages, though. I wrote this one, and I wrote this one. Actually, I wrote this one, too. So these are all the packages that I've developed, and I test them here inside this particular environment before I then push them. This one goes to the PowerShell gallery. This one goes to the PowerShell gallery, and this one goes to, actually, these are all PowerShell gallery ones. Oh, yeah, this is for the team module. I also have this for another module here. So if I were to go back to the league and then bring up Yo Team, it also has package management in here as well. You're going to see a whole different list of packages in here for Yo Team. Yo team. Yeah, a whole bunch more. So this is an NPM package. So NPM relies on all these other NPM packages, which is actually pulled into this one for me as well. And Yo is all the way at the bottom. So if I scroll down, Yo is in here somewhere. But you get the idea. These are all the dependencies for Yo team. And now I know that they're all good and vetted because they're down here with the code that's actually written. Man, this is a long list. So I won't search for Yo team in here. Or maybe I will. Generator team. There it is. So its name is generator team technically, but it's called Yo team on the command line. So this is the actual package that I've built, and you can actually confirm this with what's out inside of the NPM feed. Again, this is just a great place for you to be able to provision and test your packages and make sure they're packaged correctly and that they install correctly before you actually push them out into the wild. So like I said, it's kind of a lame demo. You can use as much or as little as you want, but I obviously think they work better together, right? So if you have not settled on a stack, I would just use this entire stack as it comes out of the box. If you've already invested in any portion of the stack already, use your current investment. Find the part where there's a gap that you haven't done anything at all, or is the most risky. Use that one feature here. What's going to happen is you're going to realize that is no longer a problem for you, and then someone else on this board is going to stand out as a potential solution for what ails you the most right now in your pipeline. But you want to make very small, controlled updates to your process, and we have solutions for everything. So we're going to make a cool announcement. Obviously, we have global reach with our products here, but one of the places that we did not have a stamp of Azure DevOps was in the UK. I said used to not have because today we actually now have a stamp right here. So whenever you want to go and create an Azure pipelines, you can actually go and create one that lives right here in the UK. Because we only have so many stamps, as you can see all over the world, where you can actually have an Azure DevOps, but now we actually have one for you as well. So if you have data sovereignty issues, if you just want to have your code very close to your engineer so that they can actually have a really good experience using our product, you can now have one and not have to worry about where the data actually lives. So when you want to go in there, it's very important to remember this. By default, it doesn't allow you to see this. There's a button you click that says Advanced, and what you want to do now is basically choose UK South, and that will be where your actual Azure DevOps project will be created, your organization will be created, and all your projects will be created there as well. So I showed you how to get started earlier, but what if you want to migrate your stuff? So you haven't gotten started yet and you want to migrate your code. We actually have a migration product, a feature that allows you to go back and take your Team Foundation server. You're basically taking your collection and lifting and shifting that collection into the cloud. We also have lots of partners, if you don't feel like doing this on your own, that can actually help you with this migration process. But from what I understand, it's pretty much just follow the guide and let the system run, and it'll move the collection for you. And you go from the on-prem product to the cloud product. Why would you want to move from the on-prem product to the cloud product? The on-prem product is updated every 3 months, which is a fantastic cadence. But it's also sometimes too fast for you to get downtime to go update that system yourself on-prem. The online product is updated every 3 weeks, and you don't have to do anything to get all the new features. So at a minimum, you're 3 months behind. But you're usually more like 6 or 9 months behind, even if you're on the latest update from what we have inside of Azure DevOps, right? So this service itself. So if you can move to the service, I highly recommend it. I describe it as everything that you love and you know and love about the server with none of the maintenance, right? You don't have to back it up. You don't have to scale it out. You never have to worry about upgrading it. It's all the love and greatness, but you don't have to do any of it on your own. So if you need help, this is a place where you can go and get some help. Internally and externally, this team is called The League. It's basically 5 DevOps practitioners who love DevOps that have specialties in different areas of the world. If you have questions about Kubernetes, open source, or Linux, you'll be talking to Jessica Dean. If you have questions about SRE, operations on Windows, DSC, or PowerShell, you'll be talking to Steve Moraski. If you have DevOps questions that are generic DevOps questions, mobile development, you'll probably be talking to me. If you have questions about Octopus deploy process, you're going to be talking to Damian Brady. And if you have pure development questions, you will be talking to Abel Wang. He is hands down the best developer I have ever met. He uses one of those old IBM clicker keyboards, the really loud ones. And when he's coding, not when he's writing email, but when he's coding, it sounds like a machine gun. Like, I've never seen anyone code with that just stream of consciousness. That's like really good code. I've developed with him before, and I always kept trying to find bugs in his stuff. It was always my stuff that was broken, right? I don't think I've ever seen a bug in his stuff as fast as he types. I thought it would be one. So you have dev questions, this is the guy I'm going to get you to talk to. If you need our help, you can actually use this hashtag. It's just an abbreviation for the League of Extraordinary Cloud DevOps Advocates. It's hashtag LOECDA. It's sort of like a bat signal. Because when you use it, my entire team will go and read that particular tweet. And if we don't know the answers to it, and Martin can attest, I will add Martin to the thread if he's the person that I know knows the answer to that particular question. So you can reach inside of Microsoft now and get questions answered that you've always wanted answered in the past. Just use that hashtag. I think we had it used 900 times in like 6 months. Right? So it's being really well used. And I've actually had a production fix pushed out in less than 3 hours once. It was back when we had Mobile Center, now called App Center. A person tweeted at me, Donovan, my builds were working an hour ago. They're not working right now. I didn't change anything. I'm like, hold on. I added Thomas to the thread. Thomas is like, we're investigating that right now. 3 hours later, Thomas just said, run it again. We pushed a fix for you. Like, how cool is that? Right? Microsoft would have never done that in the past, but you actually have access directly to us. And luckily, I know everyone on the Azure DevOps team. I know everyone on the Azure team, so I can probably get you a question, or my team can get you an answer for sure. Last bit, some resources here. Azure Friday. These are all shows that you can get to on YouTube or Channel 9. Azure Friday is great for keeping up with Azure. Visual Studio Toolbox is great for keeping up with new features from Azure DevOps, the team. If you want to know anything more about what Martin is about to talk to you about, so Martin's only going to be able to speak for an hour. These shows are about half an hour or 45 minutes a piece about each slide that he's going to show you today, right? So if you want to know more about safe deployment, you want to learn more about testing, how we do our pull requests, how we do feature flags, DevOps Interviews is the show you're going to want to go and watch. Any show that has that gentleman there, whose name is Manil Shah, you want to watch that show. Because he talks about how we went from 27,000 UI tests to over 80-some-odd thousand or whatever unit tests, right? He talks about that. How we do our ring deployment, we go from ring 0 to ring 5 now, I believe it is. We used to have a 4A, which used to be the special ring just for Windows, which is kind of cool. He explains all that stuff too, right? So if you enjoy what Martin's about to do, and you will, if you want to get deep dives on every one of those topics, that's the show you're going to want to go watch. If you have a problem that you need solved, the DevOps Lab is the show to go watch for that. It's more of a problem solution type of show, which is a lot of fun. Again, I'm at Donovan Brown on Twitter, and my team is accessible through the league. And I think I'm handing it over to Martin. Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks.